My name's Ed Cruikshank, as you probably already gathered. I've got a little shop in Arrowtown that I'm coming into exactly 7 years, actually, next week. Everybody told me it wouldn't work when I first set it up. They said Queenstown's too small a place, let alone Arrowtown. Anyway, I've proved a few people wrong so far, I think. So I'm just going to really give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour of a little bit about my story and a little bit about my work, and hopefully it'll relate to why we're all here this evening. This is the first thing I ever made, and I made it with my dad in his garage. Anyway, I was inspired really by my dad, who's an amazing creator of objects, of things. He was an engineer. He worked for IBM in the days when computers still had bits that spun around and tapes and wheels, and he was always making something. I hardly ever saw him. He was always out in his workshop doing things. Well, came across a cabinet making course completely out of the blue. I picked up a newspaper one day and there was an advert in there saying that there were still spaces on this course. So I enrolled, got in, and started doing cabinet making for a couple of years. I would have been 21, I suppose, at the time. I loved the cabinet making, loved building things, and I still do. But the thing that really, really enthralled me was the design. And I got more and more into design just before I left college, and I was destined, I thought, to go off and set up my own business and do my own thing. And I got a call from this guy, David Lindley, who he set up a business in the mid-80s doing very high-end cabinet making and bespoke design. For anybody who doesn't know him, that's his Auntie Liz there on the right-hand side. So, as you can imagine, he had quite a high profile. My first experience on the internet was with Lindley. You know, we started emailing customers around the world and doing all sorts of things. We did all kinds of incredible projects. I mean, the doors that were open to us were extraordinary. You know, limited edition Range Rover is one of the things that we did. Jet interiors and boat interiors, and this boat for me was a very significant point in my life, really. And the idea was we were designing a table about this big that was going to go in the owner's cabin, and that was the extent of it. Anyway, over a very long lunch with David Lindley, we talked him into maybe we should do the whole interior for him. And he said, oh, all right, then send Cruikshank over and he can measure up and decide whether you want to do it or not. So we did. And I came back about half a dozen times. And each time I came back, I'd tack on an extra week. And that's when I really got to know New Zealand, you know, and travelled around New Zealand. Each time I came, I'd hire a car and see how many thousand kilometres I could do in about 72 hours. So, you know, fell in love with New Zealand immediately when I came here. Like, having come from London, 10 years in London, to see New Zealand, it's like, wow, you know, this is unbelievable. So one thing led to another. I ended up setting up Cruikshank Furniture, which is where I still am 7 years later. So I've got a little shop now in this tiny little village in the middle of nowhere, really, in an island in the middle of a vast ocean, thousands of miles away from everywhere, and everyone thinks I'm mad. Why didn't you stay with Lindley? You know, he had the best job in the world in furniture design. You should have stayed there. And I said, yeah, it wasn't enough. London wasn't for me. I wanted to be somewhere smaller and somewhere connected and somewhere that I was passionate about, and I found it. So the only thing I had to do then was make the business work from this village. It's like, hang on, I do really expensive bespoke furniture. How's this going to work? But lo and behold, I started finding people coming through Queenstown and Arrowtown were very interested in what I was doing, and they were building bespoke houses. So what do you put in a bespoke house, I suppose? A bespoke piece of furniture. So we do all sorts of things. These are some of my collection pieces. Most of what I do is bespoke. That's what I'm really, really passionate about. But I also have a collection of pieces which are, in effect, ready-made, although everything's made to order. These are designs that are already designed. They're all made locally. And when I say locally, some Queenstown, some Wanaka, some Nelson, all over New Zealand. And I'm very, very passionate about keeping everything that I do built in New Zealand. That was one of the things I decided when I started the business was going to be the underscore everything. We do all sorts of things. We do furniture, we do interiors. This was an interior in Auckland, actually, for an art collector. I designed all of the pieces. There's only one piece of furniture in this whole apartment, but it had to perform all sorts of functions. Interior for a restaurant in Wanaka. And this image here really underlines my whole ethos about what I'm doing. All the pieces I design, they're designed to last for a lifetime, at least a lifetime. This is actually my little boy, Felix, on the right-hand side. This is the sort of design that I might send to somebody on the other side of the world to describe what their piece is going to look like. this is one of the real pieces. So again, I communicate, because I am in a tiny village in the middle of nowhere, in a country in the middle of an enormous ocean, I've had to get better and better at communicating. So we do a lot of stuff now from online. Anyway, really the whole point is, from this little tiny place in the middle of nowhere, which is Arrowtown, local post office, we can send things out all over the world and via email. And it's amazing how things go full circle and how important those first small steps are to what you end up doing. Yeah, thank you.